This is about the time I worked with Bill Bruford from Yes. Uh, this really good friend of mine, very dear friend of mine, his name is Bill Reim, and he was the marketing person at Hoshino, which was Ibanez and Tama. And they were out of Bensalem, Pennsylvania. And he eventually became the president of the company. But when he was the marketing guy, he would call me every so often because they needed a certain kind of studio for a photo shoot or to rent a studio. And he knew I knew all the studios in the area. I knew, what they looked like and how they were equipped. So he said, I need a place that's big, that we can shoot a video of a demonstration. And I said, okay. So I recommended this studio in Warrington, Pennsylvania, called Sound Design Studios. And it's kind of an interesting story about the studio. I think the guy's name who owned it was Bill Fitch, I think it was. He rented this industrial building, and him and his father redid the whole inside to make this huge tracking room and ISO booths and huge control room. And it was beautiful. But the landlord wanted to raise his rent. And he said, you know what? I'm not going to pay the extra rent. We're going to move out at the end of the month. And he was trying to call his bluff. He would think, how's he going to rent the studio? I mean, it would cost money to gut it and, then find a new tenant. He figured, all right, he'll get back in touch with me and say, you know what? Why don't you guys just, come on back in and we'll continue on at the rent. But what the landlord did is he called the real estate agency and he said, I got a recording studio that is available for rent if somebody wants to rent it. And it's pretty rare that somebody will walk into a real estate office to say, I want to rent a studio. But as luck would have it, this guy walks in and he says, I'm looking to rent the recording studio for a long-term lease. And I remember the guy's name was Mark, and it was Rakowski, I think the last name. So they rented the place to him, and all the work that this father and son put into the place, they lost because this other guy rented it. But anyways, that's a side story. So when we got to the studio, I went into the control room, and there was sitting Bill Bruford. And I really didn't know much about him. I found out later who he was and that. But nice guy, soft-spoken. And I sat there with him while they were setting up the cameras and that, because he was there to demonstrate the new Tama kick drum pedal. I think it was called the Iron Eagle. Something like that. But while they were setting up the cameras and all that kind of stuff, I was just sitting there and talking to him, and this was in the 90s sometime, and he never heard of Pro Tools, and I was explaining to him how it worked and that, and he thought that was really fascinating. But the story that stuck in my mind, talking to him, he was telling me that he goes to these, he gets invited to these drum seminars or percussion seminars, and he performs, and it's no big deal. He enjoys doing that. But he says the hardest part of that whole thing is when people start asking him, what does your left leg do or left foot's doing while your right foot's doing or your right hand is doing? And he says that would screw him up because he would have to think of what he was doing that came naturally to him. And he said that was always one of the things he tried to avoid, but it was inevitable. People would ask him about that. So that was the day I got to hang out with Bill Bruford, which was very, very cool. And I found out later on, legendary drum player. So there you go.